We have 3 public hearings first, so we'll do those first, and then we'll open the board meeting and such like that. So, with that, in accordance with RSA 198:20-C2, a public hearing is held by the Kentucky Valley School Board for the purpose of expending funds from the Conval Building Capital Reserve Fund for the 2021-2022 fiscal year to conduct an engineering study for GBS and SMS. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this? This is the engineering study for the, Lori. Sorry, Lori, yes.
Okay, so budget and property, we've discussed $160,000 for between the 2 buildings for the engineering study.
Thank you. This is in relation to replacing the atrium roofs? Is that this project, or is this a different project?
It was different.
Different.
It's
Okay,
different.
thank you. Questions? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. Moving along to the next item. In accordance with RSA 198:20-B, a public hearing is held by the Kentucky Valley School Board for the purpose of accepting the unanticipated ESSER funds for the 2021-2022 fiscal year.
So that amount, right now we have allocated 1.4 million. I would say that it would be good to vote to accept up to 1.5 million, and then if there's any fluctuation above that, we would come back to another public hearing.
Okay, so, and we'll do the last one, and then we'll do all the motions at the end. Is there anyone that wishes to address the board relative to acceptance of the ESSER funds? Hearing none, seeing none. Last, in accordance with RSA 198:20-B, a public hearing will be held by the Kentucky Valley School Board for the purpose of expending funds from the Daniels Fund, Hancock, to build a pavilion at the Hancock Elementary School in the 2021-2022 fiscal year.
Okay, that is this 58,000 for a pavilion, and about 22,000 for the playground and to install. So I'd say up to 85,000 to account for fluctuations in pricing.
Okay. All right. So the first, relative to the Conval Building Capital Reserve Fund in the amount of $160,000 to conduct an engineering study for GBS and SMS. Is there a motion to approve? Do we need a motion right now? Moved by Dr. Ullman. Second by Greg Kriebel. Discussion. Sorry, Dr. Kriebel. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Next would be a motion for the purpose of accepting unanticipated ESSER funds for the 2021-2022 fiscal year up to $1.5 million.
So move.
Moved by Dr. Ullman.
Second.
Seconded again by Dr. Kriebel. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The last would be a motion for expending funds from the Daniels Fund, Hancock, to build a pavilion and playground? Do I need, right? And update the playground at Hancock Elementary School in the 2021-2022 fiscal year in the amount of up to $85,000. Moved by Dr. Ullman.
Second.
Second by Dr. Kriebel. Discussion. Yes.
Can someone just remind me how much we spent on the pavilion in Dublin?
So we didn't, that was also
I mean,
a
That was-
donation.
it was also,
that was a
it was,
donation.
it was also a donation, but
Yep.
just by way of comparison, what was that?
I think
Amount?
that was about 62. Yeah. Do you remember off the top of your head what it was?
But it was
In
donated labor.
materials,
Yeah.
but, and then the rest was donated time, labor.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Approved. Thank you. With that, I will now close the public hearings and call the school board meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. The pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So good evening. We will have non-public at the end. We won't have one at the beginning. With that, points of pride. Superintendent.
Sure. So we can start our points of pride off with our athletics and our boys at the high school boys team just won their semifinals 58-47. So congratulations to the boys basketball team. Additionally, Unified Basketball on Friday, February 11th won their senior game against Fall Mountain at GBS. The GBS girls robotics team performed at their first competition on February 13th, and that earned them an invitation to the New Hampshire 2022 VEX IQ Pitching in State Championship. At GES, third and fourth graders enjoyed their first field trip in 2 years. So that might not seem like a big point of pride. That's a huge point of pride. We visited the ATC at Conval High School, and students enjoyed seeing all the different programs and visiting the high school. The K2 students will be heading to the high school on Wednesday to see the performance of Frozen Junior. And for today, those are our points of pride.
Thank you, Superintendent. With that, we have reached the first period of public comment of tonight's meeting. If you are here to make public comment, please raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. You will be provided a period of 2 minutes to speak. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment? Please remember to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll start your timer. And push the, perfect.
Green.
If it's green, perfect.
You're good.
Then they can hear you from home or at home. Oh, sorry, yes. The big, perfect.
Now we're correct. Okay, thank you. My name is Erin Nolan, and I live in Peterborough and have 4 children in the district, 2 at the South Meadow School and 2 at Dublin Consolidated School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. I have been here before, and I respectfully request once again that the board consider making masks optional throughout the district. Many districts in New Hampshire have already moved to a mask optional model, as have districts throughout New England. I feel like it's really time for us to move forward, and making masks a choice is the right choice for our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Please step up, make sure the light's still green, tell us who you are, where you're from, and then I will start your timer.
I'm Jessica Seeger. I have 3 children in the district, all 3 at Hancock Elementary, so thanks for the playground and pavilion. I hope there's progress on that. That sounds amazing. Again, big fan of the school district, big fan of Hancock Elementary School. I've been here before. I've also spoken before. You may or may not remember me. My opinion has not changed from the last time you heard from me, and I want to echo Erin. We have seen now, before it was conspiracy theory, but now we have the data. We have 2 years of data, and we have many other school districts around the country, around the world, going maskless or optional. And the rate of infection is not higher. The rate of mortality, still virtually 0 for children. Sickness among children, non-existent. This is not a threat for children, healthy children, which is the majority. If we consider this a threat, then shouldn't we also consider a stomach bug a threat? Yesterday, there was a child in elementary school, in kindergarten, who fell asleep because he wasn't feeling good and threw up. Stomach bug. Very contagious. For the very young, the very old, and the feeble, the immune compromised, a stomach bug is as deadly. As COVID, we can all agree that is a fact. So is the common cold. So is the flu. Yet those things are not being handled the same way as this. But maybe it's time that we should take a look again because the variants have changed. The science we are all saying now has changed. It's time to reevaluate. And if we don't, let's ask ourselves why not. We are giving up the experience of our very young for a feeling of safety among the older, which my grandparents would not have done. And I think it's time we all have to take a look inside and remember our own experiences when we were young
And imagine for a minute that this was happening to us and how different our lives might have been. What lessons we might have internalized at that age, that we are dangerous to each other. That's what you're teaching my kids, that they're dangerous to each other. That they're not safe without a piece of cloth on their face. Well, scientifically, that's just not true. And I know we can disagree about facts, but really, there isn't a lack of objective truth. The science will come in. It already has for many of us.
Thank you. That's your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out, both of you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the board tonight? Thank you again to the members of the public that come to our meetings to provide public comment. With that, next. On the agenda is your consent agenda. There are 2 items on your consent agenda. The first is the board meeting minutes from February 1st of 2022. The second is a retirement notification for June of 2022 for John Rittenauer, the Conval High School Athletic Director. Are there any questions or objections to the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. We are now on to the superintendent's report and presentation of business. With that, I'm going to ask the board's willingness to move item 8E, the reopening plan, under the superintendent's report, and let that go first instead of under old business. Is there any objection to moving that item up on the agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, superintendent. Sorry, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So within the past 2 weeks, we've seen the end of, or announced end of, restrictive school mask mandates in New Jersey, Connecticut, Oregon, and Massachusetts. We've also seen a significant fall off in cases around the country and around the state. Data available as recently as today indicates that New Hampshire's vaccination take-up rates are very similar to states now ending their mandates, very slightly lower than New Jersey, and crucially that vaccination take-up rates for school-aged children are similar to those states as well. In light of these facts, I would like to make the following motion. To direct the administration to prepare for a move to a masks optional policy on the return to commence March 7th, 2023. 22, you're right.
I'll second
22.
that.
Motion by Rich, second by Dr. Creed. Anyone clarification? Say it one more time, a little bit louder for the folks in the back.
To direct the administration to prepare for a move to a masks optional policy to commence March 7th, 2022.
Moved by Rich, second by Dr. Kriebel. Discussion. Dr. Ullman.
I'd like to hear from Dr. Kriebel what his perspective is on this. I will point out that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the American Academy of Pediatrics has not yet changed its advice. And I believe that the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services also has not changed its advice. This may be institutional slowness, I'm not sure. But I'm especially interested in hearing from Dr. Kriebel.
Dr. Kriebel.
So you are correct, Dr. Ullman, on your previous 3 statements. At this point, I would say that given the declining rates, given the current overall lack of significant morbidity in our school-age children, I think it's very reasonable to take a match optional approach, especially given the fact that people who are interested in getting immunizations have had the ability to get immunizations now for a couple of months, and that covers the vast majority of our school-age children. So I think it's a reasonable step to take at this point. I know that there'll be some that are very happy with this, and there'll be some that are unhappy with this choice by us, but I do think it is time to make a change. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Kriebel. Additional discussion. Janine.
So, as part of the preparation, I think that I put this question to you, Rich, before, and you indicated that the part of the preparation would be that our superintendent would check in with our advisory, our medical advisory, and with the staff to before we implement this policy.
Mayor, I have no authority to make any such representations. I was just, I would speculate that Kimberly's going to speak to a lot of people now. Yeah, but I can make that part of the motion if you like.
I don't think it
No,
needs to be
not necessarily.
part of the motion. All of our previous discussion on this has suggested we would take input from that group. So I expect that to be the same here. Liz?
I just want to say I support Rich's motion. I think it's really important now to focus on kids and choices and getting them mentally healthy and giving them an opportunity to communicate, especially the kids that, may be at a bit of a compromised place because of their development or many, many other factors going into it, in addition to what was already said by Dr. Kriebel. So I'm firmly supportive of this move.
Kira?
I have to echo the same sentiments that have been shared. I think with seeing the numbers the way they've been going, knowing that vaccinations have been accessible to school age children and adults for, gosh, I don't even know, months now, a year. The opportunities have been there for those who wish to take advantage of them. And I say, as the temperatures warm up, let's ventilate our schools and we'll give people the option.
Thank you. Kimberly?
I just would note that our schools are extremely well ventilated. We put significant dollars into our ventilation systems at the very beginning of COVID.
Indeed, we did.
Sorry for the sorry for the implication. I wasn't meant that way. Fresh air is excellent.
Additional discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? The motion is adopted. Sorry, what? Thank you, Jim. That's approved. Thank you very much for that discussion. Moving right along to the next part of the superintendent's report, snow days / weather events.
So we, the board had asked for me to come back to you to talk about weather events. We had decided that the first 3 would be traditional snow days. It is February. We have had 3 snow days, so I'm back. I will tell you, to have 3 snow days at this point in February is amazing. But that I am looking for the board's direction because that's what you asked me to do. So am I going to the teachers to discuss remote days on additional? I can see Abby does not like that idea. Am I going to the teachers?
Our student rep says no, for the record.
Am I going to the teachers to discuss remote, or should we move forward? I would just note that we usually have significantly more snow days by this point, and we are in the last week of February for us, with a very clear calendar for the rest of this week. Yes.
Kira and then Dick.
If we had additional snow days at this point, I know we have not set a graduation date. Would the theoretical graduation date get pushed back further than the anticipated current graduation?
Well, right now we haven't changed the last day of school, so if everything stays the same, I will be asking for the last day of school to be June 17th, and I'll bring all the calculations to you for that, because we like to end in 1 week and try not to go into the next week, which would be put graduation the Friday prior to that, which would be the 10th. So no, we haven't decided graduation, but graduation, that will probably be the asked for date at this point, barring no blizzard of 77 or 76.
78.
78.
I wasn't there.
Thank you.
I missed it. Dick.
I just want to make sure that we are not going to be extending the school year for students. So if we have a way to make it possible not to have to make these days up, then we ought to take advantage of that opportunity. The sooner we get kids out in June, the better for kids. And my belief is we probably have two options here. One, to do remote, or to count hours. And I would assume we're still able to do that.
We are fine for our hours as of right now. If right now, even with one more snow day, we would still only be going to that Friday. As long as we go to the Friday, we're good
Right.
right now.
So I go back to my original point. Whatever it takes, and if we have to do remote for a day to make that happen, then I would advocate that we do that. If we can do it by hours and still get kids out, great. But
We're-
one extra day in June, as
safe.
far as I'm concerned, if we can avoid that.
Thank you, Dick. Dr. Kriebel.
Ditto.
Thank you, Dr. Kriebel. Anything else? So I have the sense of the board that we're still continuing for the right
Snow
now
days.
with regular good old fashioned snow days.
Ice days.
Ice days. It's all ice,
Ice
days,
days
these days.
these days.
Stop buying plows, start buying sanders and salt.
Before I turn it over to Amy, I do want to go over, you have a proposal related to Hancock Elementary School. That should be in, looks like this. So we have been advertising for both a special ed long-term sub as well as a regular long-term sub in hopes of making sure that we had somebody. What this would, we have no, just to be really clear, we have no qualified applicants for either position. So what this would do is combine grades 3 and 4 for a total of 20 students. This teacher has had these students before, so this is not a complete, wouldn't be completely a new teacher for these students. So this is the recommendation at this point, so that we can have less of a bumpy transition for these children. Again, we have exhausted every other option. We also, by the way, examined the caseload at HES and the service hours at HES to see if we could possibly shift caseloads around across the district, and we couldn't do that either, not with the number of service hours and the caseloads. So that's where we are.
Questions? Dr. Kriebel.
I motion to accept the proposal as written.
I'll second that.
Moved by Dr. Kriebel, second by Dick. Questions? Discussion? Dick.
I think this is an extremely reasonable solution to a very difficult situation, and thank you for it.
Nicole and
Thank you,
her
Dick.
staff.
Thanks. Dr. Ullman.
So there'll not be a paraprofessional. Diane Johnson will provide the additional assistance to the 20 student class, is that?
No, she will provide additional support for special education meetings. She's the K4 special ed coordinator. So we have to have an LEA at every meeting. So we wouldn't, and usually that is the special, or it can be the special ed teacher. That won't be possible. So Diane will be supporting that role.
Additional questions? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
So I would turn it over to Amy Janik. She's going to do a presentation on learning recovery.
So I was here a couple of months ago and would like to share a little bit of what's happening and some of the progress we've made with learning recovery. If you'll remember, our goals for our learning recovery plan include supporting students and staff's emotional well-being, focusing on acceleration of learning, providing high-intensity tutoring, K to 12, and expanding learning time for students, K to 12. The staff that we have currently to move these goals forward, along with, of course, our staff, our teachers and counselors and staffing throughout the district, include at the elementary level, we continue to have our math and literacy coaches. At the middle school, we have a math coach, and we continue to work with Keys to Literacy to build our ELA skills, specifically summarizing. We did hire a literacy coach to work at the middle schools next year. She'll start in July. And actually may be able to start a little bit earlier than that, but she is moving from the Midwest. So there's some things to be moved around. We have also contracted or in the process of contracting with a consultant, a math consultant who will work at the high school. He is coming in April and again for a week and then again in May. And from there, we'll develop a plan for working with the math department over the following year. What? Oh, I thought you had a question. We have our during school tutors. We continue to advertise for those positions. We did manage to hire, super excited, a part-time math tutor who was, Jean Robbins was a teacher in the district for years. And then we have our part-time and full-time literacy coaches, or tutors, excuse me. We continue to have a during school tutor who works in our Eastern World Heritage classes. And then I have spent, Anne and I have spent time going to various schools, introducing our before and after school programming. To get tutoring going at each of the sites across the district. Currently, Great Brook has just gotten started with math tutoring, after school math tutoring. There are 2 math tutors right now. And we continue to offer after school tutoring at the high school. There are 4 teachers that are tutoring at the high school. So, at the elementary level, our coaches are currently working in Pierce, Antrim, Dublin, and Peterborough. 505 of our 722 elementary students have been impacted at some level by coaching. So that's about 70% of our elementary student population. 100% of our middle schools have, students have benefited at some level from math and literacy coaching. So I feel good about that. As a part of our coaching process, we've surveyed teachers to see what is working and what needs to be improved. We sent the survey to 22 teachers. Those are the teachers that worked with coaches from the start of September through January, and across 4 schools. 17 teachers completed the survey, and you can see the range of practices that they are using to increase student learning since they've been working with coaches. Our main focus with the coaches' main focus is to really help teachers to get kids doing more of the heavy work around thinking and learning. So explaining how they've solved a problem, sharing different ways in which they can solve problems. With that, you can see the highest scoring areas that instructional practices that teachers are using or are trying to implement are increasing student interaction and conversations in math, and then using questioning strategies to increase students' discussion. And then the others are areas that coaches have helped with. 12 out of 17 teachers shared that their teaching practices have improved for the better as a result of coaching. In addition to the coaching, the administration, the ACLT team is working on developing a walkthrough tool to improve our practices in looking and observing classrooms and identifying and building and understanding these instructional practices, these high yield instructional practices. And we can then be more effective in providing feedback and working with teachers as well. At the elementary level, tutors currently work in Pierce, Antrim, and Peterborough. At the high school, we have the 4 teachers providing after-school math tutoring, and that's available to all math classes. We also have the ELA tutor who continues to tutor students in reading and writing as they apply to Eastern World Heritage assignments. And she's in 4 classes this semester. So while we expect that coaching and tutoring will positively impact our standardized scores in Ames Web or NWEA, we know that is going to take time. We are seeing some increase. I can look at Ames Web and see that students, about 74% of the students have improved their Ames Web scores, their oral reading fluency scores, but I really want to capture all of our data and really dig a little deeper before I can share that kind of data. But throughout tutoring, teachers and tutors are monitoring students' progress in relation to grade level standards. And we use these, so when a student is referred for tutoring, they'll indicate which standard needs to be addressed and what skills within that standard. We then use our standard-based report card verbiage to help determine how students are progressing while engaging in tutoring. So beginning score would mean that a student has little or no skills and knowledge with that particular standard. Progressing below grade level means that the student's making progress, but not at a rate where they will master the standard by the end of the year at that rate. And then progressing on level means that the student is learning at an appropriate rate to master the standard by the end of the school year. So when we look at the elementary students, the first chart shows that 30% of the students were progressing on level at the start of tutoring, and 70% were progressing below level. And then after 3 to 6 weeks of tutoring, 50% of the students were progressing on level, and the other 50 were progressing below level. So we were able to make some shifts with some of the students being able to make that progress. At the high school, at the start of tutoring, 67% of the students were progressing below grade level. 33 were at the basic level. And at the completion of the semester, only 17% of the students were at the basic level, and 17% of the students were progressing below. So the remaining 76% of the students had met grade level standards for that first semester. So another question, so from our expanded learning program, while we're really focused still on doing the before and after school tutoring and getting that going, I'm also in the process of we are in the process of getting our summer programs structured so that we can get information out to our student or our staff for employment and out to families. So, the first program that we will have is Summer Academy. That's really going to be offered for students entering 7th grade through 12th grade. So in similar to past years, the Summer Academy will be a 4-week program, 4 days a week, have those 2 sessions. It's available to all students, but then we'll also invite students to participate in an embedded boost program. And that's to recover class grades, improve class grades that has already been taken, or potentially give students a head start for the next class that they take, or they'll take in the fall. If possible, if we have the resources, we'll offer tutoring, and we are working on securing transportation for that. Our other program will be I'm calling it Explore and Expand. I hope everybody's okay with that. That's really focused for 1st through 6th graders. The focus will be math and literacy, so those foundation skills and some and algebraic, preparing for algebra, as well as art residencies. So expanding their experiences, their world experiences through residencies. We're working on, I've been in contact with a cartoonist, a drummer, an artist who does mosaics. So we'll bring those residencies in to provide those supports or that instruction. That will be a 4-week program, 3 mornings a week. We anticipate 4 sites for that, and it's available for all students in a first come, first serve. The class sizes are 15 students. We're trying to keep them capped at 15 students, and then teachers would work with students in smaller groups as needed. And then we would provide targeted, we would still have targeted students that we would be inviting that really need that real boost of instruction. And again, working on securing the transportation, which is why the sites aren't identified, because we have, we'll ultimately need to be working with ESY and Title I to be able to coordinate, coordinating transportation, but also possibly making those residencies an opportunity for everybody. So, questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. That's a great presentation. One question is that, are you satisfied with the results so far that you have seen? And if not, what impediments do you see that are in the way?
So, well, I won't be satisfied until everybody is, at proficient.
So that's why I said so far.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm most satisfied with is the solidifying who would benefit the most from, and being clear about who would most benefit from tutoring. One of the things that I am completely, I've always known, but it is gathering data is so difficult, really firm, hard data, because I'll be honest with you, so I'm looking at that data of those students. Is some of that because of tutoring, or is that because of the classroom instruction? Is it both? And how you tease that out? Is it because their family stabilized and all of a sudden students were doing really well? Is it because, they're not remote anymore and there's more consistency? But I'm finding, pulling out that data, I'm figuring out better ways to gather data, which feels really good to me. And I'm excited about the summer programming. I need more tutors. I need a lot more tutors. Yeah.
Finding staffing has been hard.
Right.
So,
And asking, while our staff are incredibly hardworking, the idea of doing after-school tutoring after a full day of instruction, is exhausting. I mean, and it's working, but, yeah, I need more staff.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I really appreciate it. And it's nice to see that, you know, the tutoring is having a positive effect on the kids that are getting a chance to take advantage of it. I have a couple of questions actually. So one is probably regarding staffing, but in the schools that that you haven't been able to implement any aspect of the learning recovery program, is that the biggest block for you guys right now in terms of school specific implementation?
Yes, yeah. I mean, if I had, I would also say, even, you can see that have more staff at the elementary. We still have 8 schools to get to. So you have to, you're prioritizing where will you get the most from your tutors.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question I have is kind of, it might be sort of a vague thing, unanswerable almost, but how long do we think we're going to be able to implement learning recovery strategies for? Like how do we see this going forward? Just because I'm seeing this kind of, take shape and you're able to get some things off the ground and implement some of these different strategies that we've been talking about. Just want to see it continue to build that momentum and, really get out there to the kids who need it.
So that is in part the work that we're doing with the administration, making sure that our administration really has a firm understanding of those instructional practices, and then also bringing in some professional development for our teachers to really understand, then adding that embedded professional development from our coaches, so that it has long-standing impacts.
I think the question that you're asking too has to do with, obviously we have the ESSER money.
Yes, yeah.
The ESSER money.
Absolutely.
They will allow us to, and that will also give us a chance to figure out which are the most impactful extended learning activities, and then make some suggestions on how we may want to embed those into our annual calendar.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And one last question from me, and then I'll let somebody else have a chance if that's okay. You mentioned that these services will be, children will be targeted, we'll be able to figure out who could benefit the most from these services. And I'm wondering what the standards are for that, if you can kind of give me an idea.
So when we think about, there's 2 different groups. One is the student who's just, you saw those kids that are performing on grade level. They're moving along, but boy, they're really stuck on one concept. And how do we bump them and build that understanding so they can keep going with the grade level standard. And then the other group is we're that they just need to hear it a second time. And so what we're looking at, what we're really trying to implement is pre-teaching. So what is, and I'm thinking a little bit more at the elementary. The high school functions a little bit differently with that, right? Because kids can say, I don't get this. Can I go to tutoring this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon? At the elementary, figuring out those students who aren't going to be in tutoring for, months, but a good 6-week period. So they're for lack of a better word, sometimes we're calling them cuspy kids. But I think there's more to it. There are also kids that maybe really missed a lot last year. And they're perfect. We're able to build their skills, give them the exposure that they didn't get last year that can help them move forward.
Thank you.
Did that answer?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Greg.
Thank
Dr.
you, Amy,
Kriebel,
for that presentation. To follow up on, I have a couple questions. To follow up on Liz's last question there, I certainly think targeted is important. I guess my concern for the explore and expand anyhow is, you talk about a limited space. You've got 15 times 4, so 60 students. And we talk about a first come, first serve. My experience is first come, first serve is often filled with the parents who are up on everything and know everything, and it's probably the kids who are struggling more, whose parents aren't going to be up on a lot of stuff. Some of them are, but they're the ones that tend to fall through the cracks. So are we going to make sure that all the targeted people have a slot before we do first come, first serve?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like, of the slots, X number will be for our targeted students. We're going to start that process way before we start accepting, not way before,
Okay. No,
but
super.
before, absolutely.
And there may be a time that we have to have some hard conversations with parents about, for participating in a targeted program, or what are our other options?
Right.
And those are hard conversations to have.
Kind of that, and this would be in addition to our Title I.
Don't hurt yourself, Mr. Chairman.
I was just clarifying that this programming is in addition to Title I summer programming.
My second question, certainly the data for the high school was very compelling. I mean, that was a huge increase, and that's very good. I mean, the data in the elementary school was good, but not nearly the same as the high school. Do you have any insight to why you did so much better in one versus the other? Or Dr. Forrest, you seem to have an answer.
Amy may have more as far as this year, but also remember for the last couple of years, we've been working with the math department to get after school tutoring in place for students in Algebra 1. And so they've gone through a couple cycles of revising how they function. So at first it was kind of set up by, I believe, unit, and they discovered if we wait to the unit to identify who needs support, it's like we're too late. So then they had set up kind of a weekly cycle, which became really, I think, labor intensive so every week they were identifying kids based on that weekly assessment and sending out emails. So they're now on their third iteration of how to make this work. So I think that has contributed to some degree that they've really started to figure it out for their students.
So it's almost like we've had to accelerate that process at the elementary level. So we started, people are identifying the most in need, and we had to pivot and shift from that. And then getting to that point of, well, who do you want, and how do we identify that? And because those tools for identifying students is, we have processes to determine who's in Title I and who's going to get special ed, and we tend to lean toward those processes, and we had to shift. So it's the learning curve.
Really about, sorry, I'll talk really loud. It's really about when is the best time to intervene. So, if you wait too long, then they've lost, a student can lose so much ground that they're significantly behind, and tutoring is just not going to be enough. You're going to really need to do some deeper remedial work. If you go too early, it just is not worth. What is it that you say, Mr. Dunning? The squeeze is not worth what? The juice is not worth the squeeze, or right there you go.
And just figuring that out is hard.
Yeah. And then my last question, if I may, actually goes back to your first slide about the coaching the teachers. So, you said that 2/3 have made changes based on the instructions they've gotten, which is a pretty good number. Have you done any follow-up with the other 1/3 to find out, are the other 1/3 just super teachers with nothing that needs to improve, or should they be sharing something with their other, colleagues, or is there a better way to reach these people?
Right, right. So coaching is all relational. And well, actually, that's not fair. A good portion of coaching is about the relationship. And the process, for each person is different. So I have not necessarily followed up with the teachers about what's working or what's not working for them. I've certainly I just finished my mid-year review with my coaches to talk about strategizing, and also the coaches are meeting with the principals to strategize. I think some of this is the alignment, how much do the principals understand so that they can be supporting and encouraging the teachers to work with the coaches. But and again, we've expanded. They're now working in more schools, so we'll be able to survey more teachers and maybe get a more targeted tool to understand what is working and what isn't working for
I just think
them.
it'd be valuable,
Yeah,
valuable
yeah.
feedback for the teachers, for what is working for the teachers that are getting a benefit, and
Right.
maybe what's not working for the
Right.
teachers that aren't. I just
So
think
I
that would be a
made
good way to evaluate.
I made the survey anonymous simply because I wanted real honest feedback. So it's a little bit, I did ask for feedback and suggestions, and yeah, sure. Yep.
Since this is obviously not just a district issue, do we take a look at other districts to see what they're doing, what we can learn from them, or what they can learn from us, and see how we measure
Right.
to them?
That's a great question. I just finished talking with one of the math coaches yesterday during her review, and that's the exact conversation we had. Is a couple of districts have just pulled, or not last year, also pulled in coaches, have PD going on. Specifically, they hired a math director, K to 12, to see what they're doing and see what might be working or not working there. And we also are working with some consultants in, right now, it's called All Learners, and they're doing a review and making some recommendations with what they can, where they can direct our work.
I just had a follow-up on one of Dr. Preble's questions. So going back to that data with the two pie charts between elementary and high school, I think the data, I agree, it's very compelling visually at the high school. I'm curious though, of that 70% below grade level for elementary that became 50%, did you see a marked growth even in those students who are still below grade level? Because as we know, elementary
Yeah, you
subjects
see
take
bigger.
longer to teach.
Yeah.
So in theory, they would also take longer to recover.
I can pull that data for you if you, I was looking at Ames Web data and I was stunned at some of the, 28 words a minute increase from beginning of tutoring to the end. I was just, cause it's true, the ship is so much easier to move, when they're in first and second grade. But I didn't bring that data because it's just such a small window, and it's not necessarily impacting that classroom performance.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have one request, one statement, and one question. So the request, the school board member who actually requested this presentation couldn't be here tonight.
Oh,
Or at least
it was Liz, actually, I thought. It was Liz.
it was Liz and Catherine, right? It was just Liz? Okay. But could we send it
Sure,
out?
absolutely.
Including the data that you used to generate the charts would be good. My statement, because I'm going to be consistent, because I think I said this in my first board meeting 9 years ago, so I'll go out on the same note, is that when the population size is fewer than 100, it's less helpful to have percentages than raw counts.
Okay.
And when you do the math on those percentages, I mean, we're talking about 60 students in the elementary school. So moving from 30% to 50%, I mean, you're not talking dozens of students. And my question is, what's the targeting, what are the targeting criteria? And the reason I'm asking is when you presented last time, you told us then that basically the kids that were getting referred for tutoring were kids that would have been referred for tutoring basically in any year.
Right.
And that they weren't necessarily the ones that were at grade level 2 years ago that had fallen slightly below. So what's the criteria now for targeting?
So the criteria is, and it's that students are having some type of classroom data indicates that a student or two students have not demonstrated an understanding of a particular skill in a standard. So exit tickets in math, or Ames Web oral reading fluency, they should be increasing in second grade 2 words a week. Kids that aren't making those, closing those, or making those kind of gains in a period of time, then get referred for tutoring. If the whole class is struggling, it becomes a coaching issue. Go ahead, Anne.
I think you're hitting on one of our early challenges, right? That we had a structure and a set of procedures, as Amy said, in place, and we tried to use that, and we realized it really didn't help us clarify the criteria for after school, before and after school, or the tutoring, because it's different. And we had been using measures that really identified kids that needed an intensive, longer intervention. So I think another thing that Amy showed you, the standards-based report card. So this is kind of shifting because we're trying to say to teachers, this is about classroom performance, how kids are doing on grade level curriculum that you are going to have to evaluate on the report card. And each report card the teachers have specific breakdowns of the different categories. And so really looking at those pieces that they'll be evaluating, and then thinking about which kids are going to potentially not make it without some additional support, but may not be hugely behind on, say, Ames Web or NWA or something like that. I don't know if that helps a little bit.
I do want to also clarify, there are kids that are still being referred for tutoring that we find need longer term, more than tutoring. And so then we use that data to shift the resource, if we have it, to provide that long-term intervention. So it's not perfectly clean.
So yes, that was the concern. And we're still talking about both the elementary school number and the high school number are less than 10% of the students, right? And so if of the 9% of students who are reaching, 8% would have been referred in any year, then is that
Right.
learning recovery? That's something different. And
my hope
one way
is,
of looking at it might be, I know NEWA testing just happened, right?
Yes, yeah. It's still in the process, which is why I couldn't use that data.
I would argue that a kid that was proficient 2 years ago in their NEWA testing in second grade and is now 2 years later in fourth grade not proficient is someone who could benefit from learning recovery. And how does that targeted?
I know. That's, you imagine a teacher being a teacher and saying, I'm sorry, they can't, that tutoring won't work. And they're saying, well, we have, what other option do I have? Why would it?
Why would tutoring not work? That seems like exactly what learning recovery is supposed to be.
If we can't if we can guarantee that a tutor can stay at a school for an entire year, that would work. But tutors are moving based on the overall, like right now, we're thinking about where are we going to place the tutors based on the performance of students with Ames Web, with NWEA, with exit tickets, and do we have a school that really would benefit from a tutor?
I think you're actually saying the same thing. So we would say that that child can't,
Benefit.
is it going to benefit from tutoring? What we're saying is that that is not the only measure that we're looking
Right. No, I get that. That's why I asked what the targeting criteria were, because when you have a kid who 2 years ago was able to be proficient,
Mhm.
that suggests that it's not a school career long issue. 2 years ago they were proficient. They went through the last 2 years. Now they're not. It seems like that honestly should be the first target. That's that's a group you can move from the not proficient bucket to the proficient bucket. And I'm just wondering how that happens, and then you loop around to what Dr. Kriebel said, which is it those kids who are being offered the 60 summer spots, or is it the same kids who would be offered that 60 spots if we had them in any year?
Mhm.
And which is going to have a greater impact?
So can I,
And Dr. Kriebel alluded to it, or is it the kids that are going to show up every summer, whether or not they're the kids that we try to target to get there? No, I'm just saying that's because that's always been, we've discussed that as a board too, on the summer stuff,
Right.
is who's showing up versus really who we
Right.
want
So
to show
so
up.
they're not the same spots. So you have Title I spots, we have ESY spots, and then we have the targeted spots. And then on top of that, we are providing almost boost programming for students that we're saying, you might benefit from this. Well, could you come back next year and be fine? Probably. But the targeted spots are the people who are like, you need longer instruction. And that's where we may be in a position this year of having hard conversations with parents around, look, your child really needs to participate because they need more time. The learning needs to be the constant, not the 180 days they spent in school.
so, well, I want to get back to Rich's point about NWA. So NWA, we do periodically. So we're actually just finishing up our winter administration. So following that, there are data meetings, and yes, we will do exactly what you're talking about. We look at a student's performance across time, and looking specifically for what you're talking about. Do we have students who 2 years ago were proficient, or last year were proficient and have dipped? But then I think the second layer is previously those students who were low would be put in an intervention that would often kind of back up and be very specific to addressing kind of a core kind of foundational skill. But instead we're then identifying those students and then thinking about what's happening in the classroom, specifically like a strong tie to the curriculum that's in the classroom, and then what tutoring can we offer so that there's that strong connection where they're immediately starting to see the impact of the tutoring in the classroom. So it's just a little bit of a different process. So we're using NWA, but then we're also looking to classroom-based measures.
One more.
Last one. So those hard conversations with parents that we're talking about there, I guess I'm going to express my opinion that it does no one any good to move into a math class when they have not mastered the material in the previous math class. And I understand that we tend to move kids along the expected progression in this district, but it's been such an extraordinary circumstance over the last couple of years that might need to be looked at.
Thank you, Rich. Dick?
I believe I heard Rich ask earlier about raw data, and if I heard that correctly, I also agree with that. I would rather see the raw data. And what I mean by that, if we have tutors who are working specifically with individual students, I would like to see what happened with what was the foundation of their learning, where were they academically before tutoring, and where were they after tutoring, and what kind of growth did we see there? The significance being, if we see a great deal of growth, then what were the strategies the tutor used that then could be beneficial to other people? I'm not sure about the coaching and how that works within the classroom. If you're not there on a regular basis, that's a pretty hard thing to deliver. You can give suggestions. I mean, you have so many teachers and they said they found they changed some teaching strategies. Well, what does that mean? Is that one idea that I got that changed the strategy? You know, that to me, that's really, it's not significant because a dialogue with another colleague could do that. So was that strategy a significant change in instruction, or just an idea on how to provide some instruction on a given unit? So the raw data is very helpful. I don't see with a limited number of tutors how we can have a huge impact, and that's no one's fault but the lack of people there. So utilizing the tutors, however we use them, is going to benefit some student, but it is certainly not going to benefit the number of students that it seems that they're out there. So I see the figures, I see the improvement, and I'm saying, I struggle with it because I'm saying, intellectually, it doesn't make sense to me. Because how could we've had that kind of dramatic change in such a short period of time when we haven't been able to make that kind of progress across the district even in the past? So the raw data would be very helpful. If we're talking about a few students, then I get it. But if we're talking about a lot of students, then I don't get it. And so that's why it's confusing to me when I look at that data to say, okay, say again.
Right, but, and remember, we're talking about high intensity tutoring. So you're talking 4 to 1. You're talking 4 students to 1 adult. So you know, I understand what you're saying. Like, how come we didn't make progress like this when with larger numbers across the entire district? Well, we certainly don't have 4 to 1 those ratios don't exist.
Yeah, so 4 to 1, what happened with those kids that made such significant changes that would be the things that would be carried over? And with those significant changes taking place outside the regular math room class time, or was it additional to math time? So if I'm getting tutored, am I being tutored during my regular math time? Or am I being tutored after my regular math time, which is an additional math instruction time? All those things are really critical to change, because one might get the impression that it was the tutoring that changed how kids progress, but in reality, it may be the fact that the kid was actually getting more math than anybody else, and that's why they improved. So when did the tutoring take place? And I know schedules well enough to know, if you're not getting in a math class, you got to pull them from somewhere else. And where did we pull them from somewhere else to provide that service? Or was it provided during math time? So I'm just curious how we did that, so I can get a clearer picture where the successes are. I hope that's helpful. I don't know. For me, it would be helpful to see raw data.
Okay. We can get to that. We don't have to do it tonight, but we can explore that, unless you have something else you want to add.
I was just going to add yes to all of those different scenarios. Sometimes it's happening during math time. Sometimes it's happening during an intervention block. And then we're hoping that we can get more before and after school, because ideally it'd be great if it was more time. But
I would actually, tutoring is all happening during math time and during literacy time right during their station, they get pushed in and work with those students during the class. And we do want to have that data, we just don't have it yet because we're still in the process of pulling that data together. Like, we're not finished at WA.
Population sizes are small enough here that statistical analysis isn't going to be helpful. So that's really what Dick is saying, right? It's a individual student by individual student analysis of what's going on, because if your population size of 60, you're not going to have PNT tested statistical analysis.
Any other questions? Tom?
Just a thought about, since there seems to be a lack of, struggling to get enough tutors, on a less formal approach, possibly some peer tutoring. I don't know if that's been considered, but you mentioned before about the coaching, a lot of it's relationship based, and a lot of times a student will learn better or feel more at ease with a fellow student or even an older student, a fourth grader or fifth grader. It doesn't have to be a very, it's an informal structure, but sometimes that can be very beneficial. So especially in a case where you're struggling to get tutors, maybe that could be a service that could be, or an activity that could somehow be incorporated.
I know that the National Honor Society group last year had started that process, but I don't know if whether or not that had continued. But I know that there was an effort by the National Art at the high school, anyway, to attempt to start some of that.
So that was, they came up with that as something that they wanted to do?
I'm not sure if they approached the advisors or if the advisors approached them, but I know that there was at least an effort on that. Kimberly.
So when a student is struggling to understand a single concept or struggling to get their work done, those are really appropriate strategies. But when a student is really struggling to grasp a concept, that is usually not the time to bring a peer tutor in. They may or may not be able to understand how or why the student is struggling with that concept. That is why we really are looking for the highly qualified tutors that we're trying to get, is because these are people who, like, retired. Jean Robbins is a retired teacher. She worked with reading and math students for years and years and years. She understands when a fourth grader is struggling with multiplication. She can dig into, well, why is this happening? What's the root cause of their misunderstanding? Peer tutors just not able to do that.
100%. So this would be supplemental, informal, and also a teacher at a higher level can recommend a student who they recognize as someone who's has natural teaching ability, natural social, high EQ, and is able to connect with people. So that might be something that could supplement, what we're trying to do.
Dick.
I just want to assure you, Tom, that happens here. I mean, that's a concept that I'm well aware of for years. And as Kimberly said, on struggling on a simple kind of assignment where pairing up makes it a real advantage to the student, when you really don't get a concept, that's where you need the extra assistance. And that's where tutoring is so valuable. It's applying that tutor and when you can do it and when you can take advantage of it, and that becomes more complicated. But I just want you to know that I know that that's happened here for as long as I can remember, and I'm pretty old.
Additional comments, questions, discussion? Great. Thank you very much, Amy and others. Thank you very much for that. Next up is turnover and recruitment.
So I would ask that the Director of Human Resources, Carrie, if you could come on up. So as we get ready to go into our recruitment season, which is upon us as we speak, we will be using this information to help our recruitment plan. So she's going to go over last year's turnover through February, from last May to this February, and what that means for our plans for the spring. Spring.
She's a soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. Hi, and thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. It is interesting to know and important to understand the conditions and factors that influence the timing and the why employees choose to resign or retire. To capture this information and feedback in a consistent format, we created an exit interview survey to identify levels of satisfaction to dissatisfaction in a variety of areas. We need to identify what we're doing well, what can be done better, and we began using this format at the end of the last school year. This presentation uses data, as Kimberly said, from exit interviews compiled from May of 2021 through February of 2022. With a total of 60 positions, retirement represented 26%, and voluntary terminations or resignations represent 74%. Teachers and paras make up the largest segment of our population, so it's reasonable and expected that these categories would represent higher numbers related to turnover. Turnover at Conval, our overall turnover rate for all of our 60 positions out of 450 is about 13%. Teachers specifically was 5% for turnover. EdWeek reported that about 8% of teachers leave the profession every year, so we're below the 8%. They also note that younger teachers and those early in their careers are among the most likely to leave. We look at our teachers. We have turnover by position and building level. It's broken out by teachers, paras, SSPs, support staff, and administration. Another way to look at it is the turnover by the building level. It's distributed pretty equally across the levels and doesn't look out of alignment based on our staffing. As expected, June is by far the most popular month to retire, followed by August. Approximately 2/3 of staff left at the end of the last school year in June. To date, we've had no retirements since June. Out of the 60 employees, again, 26% retired and 74 are the remaining resignations. The chart on the left shows the makeup of the retirements plus resignation in every category. The chart on the right shows retirements and resignations are represented by the position categories. So you can see that retirement is obviously smaller, but you can see the makeup. We sent out 60 surveys and we actually received 42 back. So I am thrilled with a 70% success rate on that. So the data that we're going through is really based on the 42 people who did respond. These are their answers and their feedback that represent here. So out of our 11 retirements, 9 of them planned to do it. So they retired according to plan. There was no big upset. There was no big life-changing event that said, oh my gosh, I need to do this. So people were keeping with their plans what they wanted to do. One of our retirees had 43 years of experience at Conval, which is phenomenal. Most people had between 15 and 25 years for the majority. What's interesting to note for the resignations, remember EdWeek said that the majority of people early in their careers are the ones who'd be looking to leave. We have average years out of those 31 people, 4 years was the average length of service. 35% only worked for 1 year. But remember, their only year at Conval was last year. There was a COVID year. It's not a great baseline to start. If you add everybody together who are non-tenured staff, who would be those first 1 through 4 years, that's 77% of the people who left. That's completely in line with what we're seeing. We only had 1 person who had 20 years of experience who resigned. So clearly that the more veteran teachers aren't leaving. The younger teachers are leaving. They're ones who are early in their careers, and they're the ones who are looking to leave. Interesting enough, 11 people or 35% took this opportunity of COVID to really relocate. They're relocating for an opportunity for themselves or for their spouse or their partner. So they took it as an opportunity to do what they want to do from any different location and be able to do that differently. Some people said the position just wasn't what they were expected. We didn't really see that in the teaching and the paraprofessional positions, but we did have that noted as far as comments from our SSPs, which are PT or school psychologists, etc. But also, administration, admin assistants, and technology. So this is an area where we can be more clear and set expectations during the interview process to really understand that employees understand what the job will look like and what the roles will look like. COVID has shifted our priorities, it's added responsibilities, and changed the workplace dynamics. We spend a lot of time making sure the candidate's skill set is sound, but we can always spend more time making sure that employees really understand the working conditions and the parameters of the responsibilities of the job, and also the limitations or boundaries of the job. The impact of your work-life balance, it's one factor that we see. We didn't see it aligned with any one position, so the lack of balance was universal. It happened. We noticed it. It was noted everywhere. What's interesting here too is that it was really rare out of the 42 people who responded to only have a singular response. We said select all that apply. So multiple people had multiple factors. And it's important that the climate and the culture was not singular one time. That was always factored with at least 2 other factors. So it's a package, it's the whole work experience. So the overall satisfaction, we used a chart. 1 is dissatisfied, could have been better, it was a negative experience. 4 was very satisfied, it went very, very well, it was a positive experience. And we used that type of a scale for the following questions. As we go through these next section, I would like to draw your attention to the placement of the responses, which will give you a visual pulse of the results. So when we look at hiring and new hire benefit processing, benefits and compensation, the nature of the job, type of the work, the feedback. We look at our professional growth opportunities, including mentoring, internal PD, coaching. The working relationships, it shows your level of satisfaction. Communication, we do a lot of it, we do it well. And we asked them in the survey, we asked them to share what went well, what could have been better for you, and how can we improve this for the future. I'd like to share with you a sampling of their responses and some themes. So I'll give you a minute to read through the slides. So while you're working here, what did you enjoy the most? We asked if there was anything that we did really, really well. How do we exceed and go above and beyond? Here's a sample. Is there anything that we didn't do well? What was disappointing? And how can we make it better for the next person who comes into this role? And are there any suggestions that regarding your building or your department? Next, we asked them about the mission, the vision, and our core beliefs. So you'll note that most people feel that we're doing this very well. When we look at our vision, we're trending about the same. And when you look at the 7 core beliefs, so things that are our beliefs that are ideals, the thoughts and attributes that we feel must exist, we're doing a good job of that. We asked them if you recommend. They said yes, which is great. This is a great opportunity for people to work here. 85% said yes, absolutely. Given an opportunity to come back, half said maybe, and I think that's always a qualifier about, well, what would I be doing? What does it look like? Only 12% said no. Some final thoughts that came out of this data that we were able to pull out. The information shared through our exit interviews did provide a lot of takeaways and insights into areas that we can target with regard to our recruiting plans for the spring. These results, layered with the work of the Strategic Plan Personnel Committee and the feedback received from the Strategic Plan Survey, provides a solid framework to really energize our marketing efforts, enhance our interview and hiring processes, and upgrade our onboarding practices. So working with Guilfoyle, we want to work with them on showcasing our schools and the opportunities that are available. We have a lot to offer. We want to really promote that and work with Guilfoyle to help with that. Additionally, on the other side, we feel like there's a lot of opportunities for us to improve our processes and what we've been doing. We have a lot going on. So it's good to be able to take a pause, take a look at our hiring process, make sure that we're taking the best route to get there and that we're not missing any stops along the way. With regard to onboarding, we all know it begins before we arrive on opening day. So we want to look at how we go through the new hire orientation process regarding their paperwork, how we educate them on their benefits. They really understand the value of their benefits package and what resources they have available to them. We want to check in with them throughout the year after they've been overwhelmed at new hire orientation day and remember those big packets. But check in a few months later, check in at the start of the January calendar year regarding financial things. Check in to see if they have any questions or concerns and really remind them of the things that they have at different times where they might be able to absorb it. So there's a lot going on at the beginning of the year. And then who needs what? So we want to ask everybody, who needs what information and how and when and what order regarding new hires and people who are leaving and building transfers and who needs what technology and how do we make sure that everybody has what they need to be successful and set this up well so that our data is good, our people are in the right place, and everybody has the information that they need. Also can look at our website and enhancing resources to make sure employees can access the information that they might need on their own when they may not necessarily be able to reach somebody in HR during Monday through Friday. So thank you for your time. I was glad I was able to share some highlights that we've found out and we've discovered.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Welcome.
This is great. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll get it to you, Jim, and we'll post it along with the other one. Dr. Ullman. Yep, they'll both. Yep, you'll get both. We'll post them. Thank you very much.
So I just apologize for my phone beeping. It was my son's blood sugar, so I thought it was turned down.
Monthly events, yep.
And I saw you jump up too, so I thought that was kind of funny.
I did. I know that. I know that.
You know that noise. So February, we're winding down our month of February. I'm going to go out on a limb and think that we're not adding any meetings next week. Really meeting at 7:30 on Thursday.
That's yes, that's a real meeting and a real time, unfortunately. Sorry.
If we move into March, policy committee and school board that first week, anything else in that first week? Voting day is the 8th. Jim, you have budget and property scheduled for the 10th. And then
Okay.
so then we are going into the week of the 14th. Are we stopping there because the organization meeting is the 15th? Okay. All right. And those are the monthly events calendar.
I hate to not schedule the strategic plan for the 17th, but
I think that I won't be here.
all right. Okay. Then that's gone too. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right. Next, teachers representative. Not tonight. Student representative, Abby. I promise to move you up in the agenda from now on, and then you can stay at your own free will instead of having to sit through all of that, unless you really want to. Sorry.
All right. So last week student council held penny wars. The sophomores did win, and they are gonna decide this week, which local charity they want to donate it to. And then yesterday we did start Spirit Week. Yesterday was school color day or Valentine Day colors. Today was Adam Sandler Day. Tomorrow is Inside Out Day. Thursday is Fancy Day for the juniors and seniors, and then Class Color Day for sophomores and freshmen. And then it's vice versa for Friday for all of us, because we are holding assemblies on Thursdays and Friday, and the freshmen and sophomores will be competing, and then on Friday the juniors and seniors will be competing against each other, in whichever class wins each day will earn points for their class, and then we'll tally them up, and then whoever wins overall, like throughout the week, will get a prize. And that is all I have for you guys.
Thank you, Abby. Next, budget and property, Jim.
Primarily, we need to get our hands around, and one is the middle school, high school renovation. The other one is the CTE renovation. So what we talked about was we need a common schedule where we can track all the major timelines and milestones of progress on each of those. And because most of the same people are going to be involved, we're going to probably try to do it in one document and set up a series of meetings outside of the budget property committee to move these things forward. I think the first major step is to set up a building committee, which will include Tim and Lori and others. So that's probably the next step, is putting together a building committee so we can start moving the ball forward on these major projects. Timeline is that obviously the nearest term one is the March 23 bond effort, if we can get that on the ballot or not. And then the CTE is probably a year or so behind that. But we do definitely need to look at them together. I think we kind of took a step forward in getting the approval to start getting money to get an architect on board, so we can come up with a concise plan.
Thank you, Jim. Next is equity, Rich.
Thank you. The Equity Committee met yesterday. We had 3 items on the agenda. The first was an update on what other districts might be doing in the way of their schedules that we're not doing here. The second was an update on the progress of the review of the high school schedule. And the third was a more general discussion of the equity impact of some of those student performance data we're seeing. Regarding the first one, the assistant superintendent gave us some good data on the districts in the southwestern part of the state and how we are doing in terms of our test scores relative to those, and in terms of the trajectory of our test scores relative to those, and some good information for further exploration. On the second, regarding the internal effort at the high school to come forward with a proposal for a change in the possible change in the high school schedule. Just because of everything that's been going on, it looks like the first time we might see a change actually implemented in the high school schedule would be for the 2024-25 school year, which is later by a year. The initial plan was to possibly make a change for the 23-24 school year. But the reality of the way these things work is because there's only one time in each year that a new schedule can be implemented. If you slip something by 3 months, you actually slip it till the next school year. So, and on the third point, there was quite a bit of discussion about the equity impact of what we're seeing in student performance data, as well as classroom environment. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Catherine's not here. Janine, for policy.
There's policy IKF, high school graduation is on the agenda tonight for a second read and adoption. We reviewed policy IHAM, health education exemption from instruction, and made several amendments to align it with the latest changes from the legislature. And it will come back to the policy committee at the next meeting rather than coming before the board. Same with ADC/GBED, JICG, which are 3 tobacco products ban use and possession aligned policies. There are less amendments that need to be made to those, and they will come back to the policy committee at the next meeting also before they come to the board. And that's as far as we got because we had to listen to the game.
Thank you, Janine. Okay, with that, we are on to old business. Normally at this meeting, we invite, and we did, any candidates for school board that are not already members of this board. They were both invited. I know that at least one of them is watching the feed and is not here in person. I presume the other is as well, so they're not here tonight. Tonight is where the individuals who have put themselves forward for candidates for chair or vice chair would provide a Q&A opportunity to the members of the board. So I would now turn it over to the members of the board if you have questions for either Janine for vice chair or myself for chair, in compliance with our policy. Dr. Ullman.
I have a fundamental question. Will the candidates for chair and vice chair commit themselves to providing refreshments to school board members? And here I'm thinking especially about brownies and chocolate chip cookies.
So I'm no longer allowed to say I'm new here. However, one of the best features of several of the meetings that I've been at is when member Catherine Heck has produced some fantastic baked goods over the years. So
is that a commitment to
I think you'd have to take that up with Catherine. But
boy, I feel a lot of looseness in this response. It's not as if you were willing to commit yourself.
So I make really good banana bread. Everything else I've tried to make cookie wise. I don't know if I'm going to blame every oven I've ever owned in the 3 houses I've owned, because they never come out right. So
should I accept?
I do, however, buy them from Shaw's a lot. They're actually pretty good. But
I bake.
There you go.
I bake. So I'll bake you some chocolate chip cookies and brownies. I don't know about every meeting, but
that's a pretty high standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, I believe Jim is offering something. Navy bean soup, says Mr. Frederickson. No, any other comments or questions for Janine or myself as the only two candidates for chair and vice?
Thank you both for. Yes, here. Yeah.
Thank you for your continued support.
Yeah.
Glad to serve. Until you toss me off and I don't need to do it anymore. All right. Having said that, the next would be legislative update. Catherine's not here, who's usually the one that provides us up on all of that. Again, there are no shortage of bills that you should feel free to weigh on in your individual capacity. You are always welcome to do that for the major ones. Again, I think Rich's advice is notable on the ones where we don't think we can necessarily move the entire bill, is to maybe carve out the parts of them that we think we can have an impact on. So as those do come in, I will send those your way along with key hearing dates. Thank you to Alan, who shared the one about one of the bills looking, I think it was Alan who sent it to us all, about school funding. With that, unless somebody else has anything else to add on that one, school board requests.
I believe all school board requests are up to date. Please let me know if that is not the case.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, we have a second read policy tonight. This is policy IKF. This is high school graduation. That was in your packet.
I move that we adopt policy IKF, high school graduation, as written.
Second.
Moved by Janine, second by Kira. Discussion. Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Policy IKF, high school graduation, is adopted. We have already covered the reopening plan. We will move into new business. I added this to the agenda. This is the petitioned warrant article, currently listed as Article 12 in the warrant. I had reached out, the superintendent had asked Dean, but we had not heard back. Dean's original opinion was that this was a appropriation article because it had a dollar figure in there. That means that the board does have the opportunity to weigh in its position. Since it's not just a other petitioned warrant article, it is an appropriation article. Therefore, I put this on the agenda to bring it to the board to see if there was discussion on that topic as to whether the board wanted to take a position on that article. Dr. Ullman.
Mr. Chair, we getting contradictory legal opinion. At the deliberative session, didn't our legal representative present say that she considered this warrant
Advisory.
article advisory in
That
nature?
doesn't mean that it's not also an appropriation.
So the question is this board going to express a preference one way or the other on this particular warrant article?
When I heard that from Dean, and he suggested it was that $200 made it an appropriation, then the opportunity was for the board to decide to weigh in or not. And that's why I put it on the agenda for you all to have that discussion. It is also legal opinion that it is advisory. So you can use that to filter your position as well.
Well, I move that the board indicate that it rejects
That is,
or
did not recommend.
did not recommend whatever
Would be the language that you
this
could add.
particular warrant article. I could go into reasons why, but I move that.
I'll second it.
In several seconds, I'll take Dr. Treeble's discussion. Rich.
So it's unnecessary, but which is why I'm going to vote to not recommend it. But I would suggest the board consider spending the $200 anyway, publicizing the ways in which it's already possible for parents and community members to access the curriculum.
That is a phenomenal suggestion, Mr. Cahoon. Kira.
I echo Rich's sentiments completely. I think a campaign to put out the ways that we already make these items accessible is very warranted, and appropriate in this case.
Great points. Any further discussion? On this matter, vote in the affirmative would be to indicate that the board does not recommend the article, and it would be included on the warrant. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. So we will indicate that the board does not recommend that article on the warrant. Next, there was no abstention. So unanimous of those available to vote. Next is the appointment of the school district clerk.
I move that we appoint Lori Schmidt as the school district clerk.
Second.
Moved by Janine, second by Dick. Discussion. Do you accept? I have to ask if you accept. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
And many thanks for
Under the RSA statutes, as someone who is already in that position, you do not need to be re-sworn in. So thank you for your service. Next is the expenditure and encumbrance report. Speaking of, Lori.
Okay, the report was included in the packet with explanations. Any questions?
Any questions on the encumbrance or expenditure report? None.
Questions? I
Go ahead.
move that we accept the report and adopt the encumbrances contained therein.
Second.
Moved by Rich, second by Dick. Additional discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The expenditures and encumbrance report is approved. Next, we have reached the second period of public comment in tonight's school board meeting. If there is any member of the public present tonight that would like to address the board, please raise your hand and to be recognized by the chair for a period of 2 minutes. Hearing none, seeing none, the public comment period of the school board meeting has concluded. Next, we have the approval of manifests.
Okay, so I certify that the manifests totaling $2,642,508.95 have been reviewed by me and found to be proper charges against Catucket Valley School District for goods and/or services received, and have been properly processed prior to their submittal to the school board.
I move we approve the manifest as presented.
Moved by Dick, second by Jim. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The manifests are approved. With that, we do have non-public this evening. It won't be that long.
I move that we go into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2.
Second.
For personnel.
Moved by Janine,
For
second,
personnel.
second by Liz. Tim?
Janine.
Thanks, Jim. That's it.